Welcome to lecture number 6 of module 1 of Advanced Geotechnical Engineering. So, in this lecture we are going to discuss about index properties. In the previous lectures we have understood about clay particle water interaction and different methods to determine clay minerals and sedimentation analysis. Before introducing sedimentation analysis, we also discussed the method for determining gradation of coarse grained particles. When you have got a soil which is more than which is having fines more than 12%, then we need to do sedimentation analysis, or it is also referred as hydrometer analysis. So, hydrometer analysis is basically used to determine the gradation of fine particles. Hydrometer is a device which is used to measure the specific gravity of liquids. As you see in this slide, you have a hydrometer with the dimensions in millimeters, and it has got a stem and a bulb at the bottom. This is used basically to measure the specific gravity of the soil suspension. So, with this it is possible to measure the specific gravity from time to time. As the soil settles, the specific gravity can be assessed. For a soil suspension, the particles start settling right from the start, hence the unit weight of the soil suspension changes from time to time. So, here in this slide, as it can be seen that this is at the commencement of the test, and once the hydrometer is placed, then the specific gravity of the suspension is measured. After elapsing a time T2, and again the reading is taken, and here you can see that the particles which are actually settled at the base, and after certain time T2, T3 and T4, and this situation of the settlement of the particles is shown. So, measurement of the specific gravity of the soil suspension at a known depth at a particular time provides a point on the grain size distribution curve. So, here the process of the sedimentation of the dispersed specimen is shown here. When you have got at time t is equal to 0, you have got a suspension, and if you have a sampling depth at a depth z from the top surface of the suspension, it can be written in the form of a phase diagram as shown here, with total volume 1 and volume of the solids and volume of water, and with the weight of water on the right hand side and weight of solids on the right hand side. So, with this volume of solids is nothing but Ws divided by Gs gamma W, okay, and the volume of water, which is nothing but 1 minus this total volume, that is this volume of water is nothing but 1 minus Vs, and substituting here you will get volume of water is equal to 1 minus Ws by Gs gamma W. So, the gamma I is nothing but the suspension at any time, nothing but weight of W water plus weight of the solids divided by total volume 1. So, that is written here as weight of solids plus gamma W Vw whole divided by 1. So, by substituting for Vw, you will get the initial unit weight of the a unit volume of the suspension gamma I as gamma W plus Ws into Gs minus 1 divided by Gs. So, this here the Gs is nothing but the specific gravity of the soil solids. In the process of the sedimentation of dispersed specimen, here at level XX, if you assume here the size of the particles which have settled from the surface to the depth z in time Td, this is from the Stokes law. When you use, we can actually obtain d is equal to square root of 18 mu divided by Gs minus 1 into gamma W root over z by Td. So, z is the reference depth where the measurement is being taken. So, above this level x, no particle of size greater than d will be present, and in element depth of dz, you can see here this is a small element depth above this level xx at a depth z from the surface of the suspension. is assumed that uniform and the particles of the same diameter exist. So, the particles are smaller than d and they actually have a uniform specific gravity. It is assumed in that particular elemental distance. If the percentage of the weight of the particles finer than d already sedimented to the original weight of the soil solids in the suspension is say n dash, that is, if the percentage of the weight of the particles finer than d which are already sedimented to the original weight of the soil solids in the suspension is say n dash, then we can actually get the weight of the solids per unit volume of suspension at depth z as n dash into W by V, where Ws is nothing but W by V. Unit weight of the suspension after elapsing a time Td at a depth z is given by, from the previous discussion, gamma z is equal to gamma W into n dash into W by V into Gs minus 1 by Gs. So, with this we can actually obtain n dash as Gs by Gs minus 1 into gamma z minus gamma W into V by W, where n dash is in percentage. So, the process of sedimentation with dispersed specimen, but here gamma z is nothing but GSS gamma W, where GSS is nothing but 1 plus RH by 1000 into gamma W, where GSS is the specific gravity of the soil suspension, which is nothing but the graduations on the hydrometer. The graduations on the hydrometer generally varies from 0.995 to 1.030 over a length of the stem. So, RH is the reading on the hydrometer, what it is noted during the process of experiment. So, n dash is obtained here as Gs by Gs minus 1 into RH by 1000 into V by W. So, which is simplified further for a volume of say 1000 cc of the soil suspension placed initially, we can actually get n dash as Gs by Gs minus 1 into RH by W. W is nothing but the weight of the solids taken for the dry solids taken for the dispersion analysis or sedimentation analysis. And as we actually keep the hydrometer in the from time to time, it is subjected to, it is required to perform immersion corrections. So, in order to calibrate or calibration of the hydrometer for the immersion, here in this slide there are two figures which are actually shown. One is before the immersion of the hydrometer, another one is the after immersion of the hydrometer. Before immersion of the hydrometer at level YY is the point at which the measurement is being made. That is where the center of the bulb is assumed to be occur or assumed to be there. So, HE is the height from the surface, from the distance from the center of the bulb to the top surface of the soil specimen. And when the surface, the top surface be XX and the surface at which the center of the bulb meets is say YY. So, when the bulb is placed, there is a rise in the water. The rise in the water suspension, is given by VH by AJ, because VH is nothing but the volume of the hydrometer, AJ is nothing but the area of the jar in which the experiment is being performed. So, here it is assumed that the y dash, which is actually rises above the, it is approximated that 50% of the VH by AG it will be subjected to the rise is about VH by 2 AG, which is about the 50% of the rise of that X dash and X dash. So, with that the immersion correction can be obtained like this: HE is equal to here H plus H by 2 plus VH by 2 AG, the distance, minus VH by AG. So, after simplification it is obtained as H plus H by 2 minus VH by 2 AG. So, if it is this immersion correction need to be applied approximately after say 2 to 4 minutes of the readings whatever we take. So, we discussed about the calibration of the hydrometer for basically for immersion correction. Then the graduations which are actually there as I said here, from it starts from 0.995 to 1.030, or in the numbers it is RH is equal to 0 or -5 to 30. These are actually graduated indicated on the stem of the hydrometer, and HE is the reference where the measurement which has been taken, and these readings which are HE1 and HE2 are unique for the hydrometer. So, need to be calibrated, and then they vary over linear distance with these readings. So, the RH conversion of RH into HE is done like this, where RH is equal to GSS minus 1 into 1000. So, the plot of RH with HE is valid for a particular hydrometer. That means that each hydrometer will have a plot for RH and HE. So, with the linear interpolation, if you see up to 2 minutes or 4 minutes, where we do not have any immersion correction, with that HE is equal to HE1 this distance, and minus HE1 minus HE2, HE1 minus HE2 divided by 30 into RH. This is up to 4 minutes, or here HE that is beyond 4 minutes, HE1 minus HE2 by 30 into RH minus VH by 2AG. So, this is after 4 minutes. So, here it is summarized along with other corrections which are actually required for the hydrometer reading, where n dash is equal to GS by GS minus 1 into R by W. W is nothing but the weight of the solids, and R is the corrected hydrometer reading, which is used in this expression for calculating the percentage, and W is the weight of the solids taken for preparing the soil suspension, where R is nothing but RH plus Cm, that is meniscus correction, plus or minus Ct, the temperature correction, minus Cd. So, N combined, that is if you have got performed a sieve analysis, and if the percentage of the fines is say more than 12%, then the total soil taken for gradation, that is Wt, and total soil passing 75 micron in a given soil mass which is taken for sieve analysis, and N combined can be obtained by getting N dash by using GS by GS minus 1 into R by W, and then substituting in N combined is equal to N dash by into W75 divided by Wt, you will be able to get the N combined. So, with that percentage the finer and the particle size variation can be plotted, and where W75 is nothing but the weight of the soil fraction passing 75 micron, Wt is nothing but the total weight of the soil skeleton for combined sieve and hydrometer analysis. So, in the hydrometer corrections, apart from meniscus correction, Cm, which is meniscus correction which is applied, always positive, because the density readings increase downwards, that is that the suspension or the hydrometer readings increase downwards. So, because of that the meniscus correction is always positive. Ct, it is positive for temperature greater than 27 degrees. So, RH will be less than what it should be. So, the reading will be less than what it should be. So, because of that the temperature correction is positive if the room temperature is more than 27 degrees. Negative for T less than 27 degrees, RH will be more than what it should be. So, because of this it is higher. So, what it is done is that the temperature correction is done negative, and CD is always negative, because in order to prevent the flocking of the soil particles while preparing the suspension, the dispersion agent is used, like sodium carbonate or sodium oxalate are used to deflock the soil. So, dispersion agent concentration to account for that, the dispersion correction is always negative. So, let us see, after having discussed the procedure, let us see an example for the hydrometer analysis with a particular soil kaolin passing very fine kaolin soil. So, here the volume of the suspension is 1000 ml and the volume of the hydrometer is which is taken for the test is about 90 cc, and the weight of the dry soil taken is about 50 grams, and the specific gravity of the soil is about 2.62. The cross section area of the jar is AJ about 31 centimeter square, and room temperature is 27 degrees. Dispersing agent correction about Cm is equal to 0.0004. Meniscus correction CD is equal to 0.0034. Temperature correction CT is equal to 0.9965, and viscosity of the water taken as 8.545 into 10 to raise to minus 7 kilonewton second per meter square. With this data, for the given hydrometer, that is HE1, which is nothing here, it is indicated as H-E1, maximum depth to center of the bulb from RH 0.995, that is the topmost reading in the stem of the hydrometer is 21 centimeter. HE2, that is closer to the center of the bulb, maximum depth to the center of the bulb for RH reading 1.030 is 9 centimeter. Let us say at time t is equal to 2 minutes after placing the suspension, and the reading which is actually taken in the hydrometer is say 28.5, which is indicates that RH is equal to 1.0285. Since H-E varies linearly with RH, by using this presumption, and the diameter of the soil particle is actually calculated by using 1000 into 1.8 mu divided by G or GS minus 1 into square root over HE 98 into 60 into T, that is the time at which the the reading is being taken, and percentage finer N is equal to G by G minus 1 gamma, that is RH plus or minus C, that is the summation of all the corrections, into 1000 divided by this mass of the solids which is actually taken for suspension. So, here in this slide calculations are given, where H-E was obtained based on the hydrometer details, where it is obtained as 9.14, and with immersion correction, that is VH by 2 Ag, it is obtained as 8.063. Now, substituting in the expression which was shown in the previous slide, D is equal to 1000 into 1.8 into 8.545 into 10 to the power minus 7 divided by the specific gravity minus 1, that is 2.62 minus 1 into square root of this 8.063 divided by 98 into 60 into 2, which gives a particle size of 0.0255 mm. So, with this you can actually calculate that N dash, that is nothing but obtained as about 93%. So, based on this, for the different timings, when the calculations are done for time 0.5 minute, 1 minute, immersion correction was not taken, and 2, 5, 15, 30, 60 and then 120, 14, 40, with the reading, these are the readings which are actually taken, and these are the corrected H-E, and then D in particle size in millimeter. So, once we plot this the particle size on the semi-logarithmic scale and the percentage finer on the y-axis, we will get this gradation plot. So, here this is the percentage finer on the y-axis and particle size on the x-axis. With this, is possible that you will be able to see the percentage points. Here in this particular kaolin soil, what has been taken, the silt particles are about 44% and clay particles are about 56%. That means that is basically a silty clay having clay fraction about 56% and silt fraction about 44% and the 100% fine fractions. So, limitations, we have used the Stokes law for calculating arriving at the particle size distribution of fine grained soils. However, we knew that the clay particles are hardly spherical, but they are platelet particles. So, the soil particles are not truly spherical, and the sedimentation is done in a jar which is actually also induces some sort of limiting boundaries type. So, for D greater than 0.2 mm causes turbulence in water, and for D less than 0.0002 mm, the Brownonian movement occurs. So, this is actually too small for the velocities of settlement, so can be eliminated with less concentration. So, if you are having a finest of fine fractions, then it is suggested that very little amount of the soil solids need to be taken, particularly for example, when we are determining the gradation of a bentonite, you should not take not more than about 5 grams of soil solids also. So, one limitation is that the soil particles are not truly spherical. Other formulation is that the flock formation due to inadequate dispersion. Sometimes what will happen is that what we measure is not the true particle size. This is because of the flock formation or inadequate dispersion. And unequal specific gravity of all particles, insignificant for soil particles with fine fraction. So, this is unequal specific gravity of the all particles, that is also one, it is assumed that all particles are actually having the same specific gravity, but there is a possibility that unequal specific gravity can exist. So, basically though it is insignificant, this is actually listed as one of the limitations of Stokes law. So, here in this plot, a total particle size distribution curve is actually shown, where you have got percentage finer on the y axis, on the x axis we have got particle sizes. So, here it is important to know that some particle sizes are actually characterized, they are called D10 as the effective particle size and D50 as the average particle size. So, here in the D50 means here the 50% of the particles are coarser and 50% of the particles are finer, and D10 is the effective particle size, which is called, in this 10% of the particle sizes are finer and 90% of the particle 90% are actually particles are coarser than that D10 size. So, we use D10, D15, D10, D60, D30, and for some filter design requirements D15, D85 are also used. So, here in this graph, where a well graded portion of the well graded distribution is actually shown, and diameter of the soil particles for which 60% of the particles are finer, that is 60% of the particles are finer and 40% are coarser than D60. That is what actually the physical meaning of D suffix 60. So, here we use, as I said, that D30 can be determined from the graph like this, and Cu which is called D60 by D10. So, in this case for the type of the soil it is obtained as 5.8, and D60 D10 which is used to determine the coefficient of curvature, that is D30 square divided by D60 into D10. So, if the value of the Cu is equal to 1, that indicates that all particles are actually having almost identical sizes. So, if the slope of the gradation curve is say very steep, then there is a tendency that all uniform graded particles exist in that particular type of distribution. So, some commonly used measures are the uniformity coefficient, which is nothing but the Cu is equal to D60 by D10, and soils with Cu less than 4 are considered to be poorly graded or uniform. That is what a steeper curve indicates, that uniform grade distribution. That means that all particles are actually having same size, or it is also called as poorly graded. And Cu greater than 4 to 6 is called well graded soil, and coefficient of the gradation or curvature is called as Cc is equal to D30 square divided by D60 into D10. If the Cc is equal to 1 to 3. So, if the Cu value is say greater than 4 to 6 and Cc value is 1 to 3, then the soil is said to be well graded. So, higher the value of Cu, the larger the range of the particle sizes in the soil. So, higher the value of the Cu, the larger the range of the particle sizes in the soil. So, typical characteristics of the grain size distribution curves, if you look into it, as we discuss, steep curves are possible with low Cu values, and they are poorly graded in nature, and uniformly graded is also referred. And Cu less than 5 indicates that for uniformly graded soils, and flat curves with mild slopes, the ICU values indicates that well graded soil. So, most gap graded soils have a CC outside the range. That is, a gap graded soil means that some range of the particle size of the particles will remain absent from the soil matrix. So, the intermediate particle sizes will be absent in gap graded soils. So, most gap graded soils have the CC outside the range. We can also see that the grain size distribution curves can also give the soil's history. In this slide, 3 different particle size distribution curves are shown. One is for the one which is on this side is for a young residual soil deposit, and here for the intermediate maturing soil deposit, and here is fully maturing soil deposit. As can be seen here, a residual soil deposit has its particle sizes constantly changing with time as the particles continue to break down. So, in the process of weathering, the particles subjected to gradation is subjected to change. So, we can say that the grain size distribution can provide an indication of soil's history. And typically, we also discussed that the soils get transported from one place to other place, and then they are called as transported soils with different agencies. And here we have got a typical grain size distribution for glacial and alluvial soil deposits. Here this particular figure, which is actually shown for the percentage finer on the y axis and particle size on the x axis, is for a glacial soil deposit, and this one is the glacial and alluvial soil deposit. So, river deposits basically have well graded and uniform or gap graded depending upon the water velocity and the volume of the suspended solids and the river area where the deposition is occurring. So, here in this slide, number of different types of grain size distribution curves are shown, and as can be seen here on the this particular portion where a gravelly sand particle size distribution is shown, and here a silty and with a fine sand mixture is shown here, and here there is a clayey and fine sand clayey and sandy silt soil is shown here. Then here two types of one is the flocculated kaolinite, other one is the dispersed kaolinite, and the sodium bentonite, which is finest of the finest of all, where you can see the finer fraction, the particles are very small. So, as we go from this side to this side, the particle size diminishes, and you have got different for example, you have got flocculated and dispersed have got here where the dispersions are between repulsions are very predominant, and here there is a possibility of flocculation. So, the flocculated kaolinite actually has got this type of distribution, and dispersed kaolinite has actually got this type of distribution, and here the sodium mantovulite based soil actually has got a distribution which is actually shown here. And particle size distribution of bentonite and illite and kaolinite, if you consider, as we discussed in the previous slide, the sodium bentonite or sodium based mantovulite has got the finer has got very small fractions of size, and when you compare these three minerals, the kaolinite soil is relatively coarser, and comes in between is illite, and then followed just finer is the bentonite. So, if you have the typical gradation, then it is possible for us to estimate what is the percentage gravel and what is the percentage sand and what is the percentage silt and percentage clay. So, sometimes if you have got say percentage clay, it is possible for us to, once we know the index properties of the soil, it is possible whether the soil is active or not can be estimated. So, in this curve, for the given example here, you have the typical grain size distribution, and the coarser particles is on this side, that is gravel, sand, silt and clay, and here the percentage gravel which is more than 4.75 is found to be 0, and the sand size is from this side to the size of the silt, that is 0.075 mm, where 100 minus 60, that is 40% is actually sand, and the silt is from this percentage, that is 60%, minus up to this 12%, that is clay fraction where it is coming, that is 48%, and the clay fraction is about 12%. So, that means that this particular soil actually has got about 60% as percentage fines, that is passing 200 mm sieve. So, in this example problem which is actually shown in this slide, we need to determine percentage of the gravel and sand, silt. So, gravel is indicated as G, sand is indicated as S, and silt is indicated as M, and clay as C for soils A, B and C. So, the three typical grain size distribution which are actually shown here. One is that the poorly graded sand, and here this is well graded silty sand, and here well graded sandy silt. So, if you look into this here, the soil A, which is actually has got 2% gravel, the gravel is very less, the 2% fraction is here, and then followed by 98% sand, and the curve is actually asymptotic here, and the 0% silt and 0% clay. Hence, here this is nothing but a poorly graded sand. In this case, it is a well graded silty sand, where it has actually got 61% of silt particles, sand particles, and 31% silt and 7% clay. So, this is actually referred as well graded silty sand. And if you look into this, this actually has got contrast, it actually has got silt particles higher. So, we call it well graded sandy silt, where 57% silt particles and 31% sand exist there. So, some applications of the having determined the particle size distribution, we can actually discuss where the grain size distribution or analysis can be used, particularly in geotechnology and in construction. Basically, very much useful in the selection of the fill material, particularly as arting material or casing material. It is required for embankment and earth dam construction. And as a road sub-base material, basically the well graded soils are preferred, and for the drainage filters, in order to allow and retain the finer fraction, the filters are required. And the groundwater drainage and grouting and chemical injection, where the fraction of the soil which is actually required to be mentioned, and concreting materials, and in the dynamic compaction is the process where the soil can be densified by dropping weights from the known heights. The practical significance of the grain size distribution can be discussed like this. Grain size distribution of soil smaller than 75 micron or 0.075 mm is of little importance in the solution of engineering problems, but GSDs larger than 75 micron have several important uses. Particularly if you look into this, GSD affects the void ratio of the soils and provides useful information for use in cement and asphalt concretes, particularly during the pavement constructions. Well graded aggregates require less cement because they have got less void spaces, and if you have got uniformly graded aggregates, then it requires more cement and it tends to become uneconomical and then less load bearing. So, well graded aggregates require less cement per unit volume of concrete to produce denser concrete, and it is less permeable and more resistant to weathering. Secondly, a knowledge of the amount of the percentage of the fines and gradation of the coarse particles is useful in making a choice of material in base courses under highways, runways and rail tracks, etc. And as I said before, if you know the percentage clay fraction, whether the clay is active from the expansiveness point of view, whether the soil is expansive or not, can be established with a term called activity. So, activity of the clay is based on the percentage of the clay fraction. And another significance of grain size distribution is that to design filters, basically filters are used to control the seepage, and the pores must be small enough to prevent particles from being carried from the adjacent soil or the base soil which is called. So, after having discussed grain size distribution, and in order to complete or in order to arrive at the knowledge for classifying the soils or grouping the soil, we need to understand, particularly as far as the fine grained soils is concerned, the different possible physical states of the fine grained soils. As the soil water content changes, soil changes from different states, from liquid state to plastic state to semi-solid state to solid state. That is, as the soil is subjected to drying, soil changes from liquid state to plastic state to semi-solid to solid states. For the most of the soil deposits which are reasonably compressed can occur at this particular water content, that is at this point where they are actually close to plastic state or this particular limiting water content. So, we actually need to have understand about the these transitions between liquid limit and liquid state and plastic state and semi-solid state and semi-solid state and solid state. So, before discussing about that, we need to understand about what is the term called consistency of the fine grained soils. So, basically it is a property of a material which is manifested by its resistance to flow. It represents the relative ease with which the soil may be deformed. So, if the soil is very stiff, then it is difficult to get it deformed. So, degree of the firmness of the soil and is often directly related to its strength. It is conveniently described as soft, medium stiff, medium firm, stiff or very stiff. And these terms are unfortunately relative and have different meaning to different observers. So, the consistency is defined as the property of a material which is manifested by its resistance to flow, and it represents the relative ease with which the soil may be deformed. In soil mechanics, basically it is required to determine the range of the potential behavior of a given soil type based on only few simple tests. Soils might shrink or expand excessively in an uncontrolled manner after they have been placed in geotechnical structures. That means that once the soils actually have been used for constructing structures like roadway embankments or roadway subgrades, dams, levees, foundation materials, they can be subjected to, depending upon the type of the mineral, they can be subjected to shrinking or expanding. So, soils may lose their strength and ability to carry load safely. So, the consistency basically here when we are discussing about the fine grained soils, the tests used to detect potential problems for coarse grained soils are different from the used to detect from the potential problems for the fine grained soils, that is silt and clay. It has to be noted, the tests which are actually used to detect potential problems for coarse grained soils are different from fine grained soils. In coarse grained soils, water content generally is not a major factor, and major factor leading to shrinkage is structure of the soil skeleton. And in case of fine grained soils, water content is a major factor, and soil expand and lose strength, and soil shrink and gain strength. So, if the water content of a clay slurry is gradually reduced by a desiccation natural process, the clay passes from a liquid state to plastic state, as I discussed earlier, and finally into a solid state. So, the water content at which the different clays passes from one state to other state is very important, and this is unique to a particular type of a soil. So, water contents at these transitions can be used for identification and composition of different clays. So, it has been thought that in order to classify or determine the index properties, it is required to determine water contents at these transitions can be determined for identification and comparison of the different clays or different fine grained soils. So, here these limits are called they are called Atterberg limits or the water contents where the soil behavior changes from when they change from one state to other state. So, here in this slide the soil moisture scale is shown, where this is the physical state liquid, and here is the consistency, and is liquid state and liquid. So, at this point the transition between this liquid state to plastic state is determined or called as liquid limit, and above this the soil is like a liquid, it is called very soft, and plastic that is between liquid limit and plastic limit. So, the plastic limit is the another type of Atterberg limit, which is a transition between plastic state and semi solid state, and in this the natural soil deposits they do occur at this particular water content, and shrinkage limit, which is a transition between semi solid state to solid state, the extremely state. So, up to, if you see that the degree of saturation, which is nothing but the volume of water in the volume of voids. So, here up till here the 100% saturation is ensured, and beyond this state the soil is no longer fully saturated, and it tends to become air starts entering here. So, liquid limit, plastic limit and shrinkage limit are the three Atterberg limits what we are going to discuss. So, here when the soil changes from one when transits from these physical states, the finally it actually changes into this type of solid state. So, if you look into, if you connect to the specific surface areas and electrical charges. So, it was discussed that for fine clay soils we have discussed that they have high specific surface areas and electrical charges are very predominant on their particles. So, because of this, the fine grained soils and clays in particular can change their consistency quite dramatically with changes in water content. So, why the particularly clays change the consistency from one water content, one state to other state, is the reason is that because of the high specific surface area and prevalent electrical charges. And each soil type will generally have different water contents at which it behaves like a solid, semi-solid, plastic, liquid. For a given soil, the water content that mark the boundaries between the soil are called or defined as Atterberg limits. So, it is pictorially it is indicated here, and this particular state is liquid limit, and this is plastic limit, and this particular state this water content at this transition between semi-solid and solid state is Atterberg limits. So, Atterberg limits are nothing but the water contents where the soil behavior changes. So, here in this particular slide where the volume is plotted on the y axis and water content is plotted on the volume of the sample on the y axis and volume of water content on the x axis. So, this particular line which is inclined at 45 degrees, it can be seen here that at point A, that is a point where the initial water content, but when it transits from liquid state to plastic state, that is the point B, that is referenced here as the liquid limit W suffix L, and point C is the plastic limit, that is transition between plastic state to semi-solid state, and but when it transits from semi-solid state to solid state, up till this point the water content is 100%, the degree of saturation is 100%, and this water content at this particular state of transition between semi-solid state to solid state is called as shrinkage limit. But beyond this point, if you look into this, if you magnify here, that there is a possibility that the air entry, this curvilinear nature of this curve, which indicates that here the air which is actually enters into the voids, and the soils will no longer get compressed and the no volume change will happen. So, this is nothing but the volume of air plus volume of the solids. So, this is the volume remains, the solid volume remains constant upon further drying. So, this Vd is nothing but the volume of air plus volume of solids, and V naught is nothing but the original volume at point A. So, if you define these Atterberg limits, the first limit, which is called liquid limit, is the water content at which a soil is practically in a liquid state, but has infinitesimal resistance against the flow, and which actually possesses a strength, and it is said that the soils possess about strength from 1.7 to 2.7 kilonewton per meter square or kilopascals. The plastic limit is the water content at which the soil would just begin to crumble when rolled into threads of approximately 3 mm diameter. So, this is a limit at which the soil will start crumbling when rolled into the threads of approximately 3 mm diameter. Suppose if the soil is having sandy particles and with a little amount of fine fraction, very difficult to make threads. So, that indicates that the soil is non-plastic. Shrinkage limit is the water content at which a decrease in water content does not cause any decrease in the volume of the soil mass. So, at shrinkage limit the degree of saturation is 1. In this particular slide, an attempt is being made to explain about the shrinkage phenomenon. So, here this is the solid particle which is indicated with Hs here, and this is water surface when it actually transiting from semi-solid state to solid state. Assume that R1, R2, R3, R4, R5 are the radii of this menisci, water menisci between the particles. And if you look into this, the radius of R1 is actually very high, R2, R3, R4, R5. As it proceeds, the menisci radii is decreasing, and then here also same situation is shown. So, this is the idealized section at the process at which where the curvilinear portion where air starts entering. So, here imagine a compressible soil containing tiny grains with capillary pore spaces between the grains. So, the mechanism is actually explained like this. When the pore spaces are completely filled with water, there is a free water on the surface of the soil. The meniscus is a plane surface, that is with R1 radii, and the tension in the water is 0. That means that the water is not exerting any tension on the soil particles. But as the evaporation removes the water from the surface, a meniscus begins to form, and each of the pores at the surface with a resulting tension in water. So, at some time after evaporation has started, the menisci would have reduced to some position, say 2, that is from position 1 to position 2. At this stage, the tension in the water is 2Ts by R2. So, if you look into this, R2 is smaller than R1, so the tension in the water increases. The soil is compressed by the stress equivalent to 2Ts by R2. So, as this process continues, see what happens is that it is something like the particles are pushed or pulled towards closer, and the tension in water Tw can be estimated by equating the tensile forces in the water to the vertical components of the surface tension force. With that, we can actually calculate Tw is equal to 2Ts by R2. So, as the further evaporation continues, the fully developed meniscus in the largest pore space recedes to a smallest diameter. So, this makes the particles to come closer and then to such a state that the particles will no longer be compressed into the further. So, this produces an increased sigma dash and causes further shrinkage. So, as the evaporation process actually goes on, the menisci keeps on tending to become sharp. With that, the tension in the water continues to increase, and because of this, the fully developed meniscus in the largest pore space recedes to the smaller diameter, which brings or pulls the particles to the closer distance. So, this explains the typical shrinkage phenomenon we actually experience in typical fine grained soils. As the evaporation continues, the menisci continue to recede and the tension in the water continue to increase, and the compression between the soil grains and the resultant shrinkage continues to increase. So, eventually what will happen is that the menisci will reach the smallest radius. That is what we have discussed previously. By the time menisci reduced to the least possible radius, the pores in soil will not be there to compress. That means that most of the compression which is possible might have already happened. So, hence this explains the shrinkage phenomenon. So, the Atterberg limits basically provide a good deal of information on the range of the potential behavior of the given soil, which might show in the field and variations in the water content. So, if you look into this, the soils actually have got in a solid state and semi-solid state and plastic state and liquid state. In the semi-solid state, or in case of in the solid state, the soil is very stiff in nature and has got a so-called a brittle behavior, and in case of a semi-solid state, the soil has combined brittle and ductile behavior like a stiff cheese. In case between in the plastic state, soil is very ductile. Soil is very ductile is something like a malleable type behavior, and here in the liquid state, that is actually beyond this or at this particular point. soil behaves like a thick or a thin viscous fluid. So, soil is something like a viscous fluid here. So, here the stress strain variation, that is sigma is in this direction and epsilon is the strain in the axial direction, is actually shown here. So, here the plasticity index, which is defined as nothing but the difference of the liquid limit minus plastic limit. It is the range of the moisture content over which the soil exhibits plasticity. It is the range of the moisture content or water content of a soil which exhibits plasticity. So, plasticity is defined as the property of a material which it allows it to deform rapidly without rupture. So, greater the difference between the liquid limit and plastic limit, the more is the plasticity of the soil. This particular clay particles which are actually shown there, where you have got the water droplets attached to the clay negative particle sizes, and we have discussed that this forms like a adsorbed layer, and the cations which are actually present in the particles are also attracted towards the negative charges here. So, this means that the range of water contents over which a given soil can pull water, its macrostructure, assimilate it and still acts like a solid. So, clay soils generally with high specific surface areas and charged particles will be able to hold large amount of water between the particles due to their charge field and the polar nature of the water molecules. And why soils actually have higher pHs and smaller pHs? If you look into this, clay soils with high specific surface area and charged surfaces are viable to bind, assimilate water molecules, and then overall soil will still behave as a plastic solid, and such soils will have higher pHs. And soils comparatively with lower specific surface areas will not be able to bind or assimilate water molecules, and thus will have smaller plasticity index values. So, for embankment dam construction, if we required to have say a hearting zone where we wanted to prevent the water seepage entering into to retain the water in the reservoir or the dam, then we need a hearting which actually has got higher plasticity. For certain type of constructions where the low plastic soils are required, so soils with comparatively lower specific surface area will not be able to bind or assimilate water molecules, and thus they have actually low plasticity indexes. So, in this particular lecture number 6, we actually have understood about particularly in the form of index properties, how to perform a gradation for the fine sand particles, and then we discussed about the different possible the soil states when it is actually changing from liquid state to the solid state, and introduced Atterberg limits like liquid limit, plastic limit and shrinkage limit, and the difference of liquid limit and plastic limit is said as plasticity index. And by knowing these things, and then if you can extend further, then we will be able to classify the soil. So, in the next lecture we will look into the soil classification and the remaining discussion about the plasticity index and the determination of the liquid limit and other shrinkage limit with some modern methods, etc.